Hi, good morning, everyone. If you're in the States and if you're in Okinawa, good evening. I hope everybody's doing great today. Today's Ask the Trainer is going to go over protein. I have this conversation with people all the time, and most people don't understand why it's so important to have a certain amount of protein in their diet. So I wanted to make sure I went over that a little bit today. Um, if anybody has any questions, make sure you ask them. And if you have any questions about anything else, then go ahead and feel free to ask that as well. I will have to cut this session a little bit shorter. Hey, Jimmy. I will have to cut this session a little bit shorter today just because I have a lot to get done this morning and I have to make sure I stay on a certain schedule. So, but I will be doing, hopefully I can stay on here for at least 20 minutes so that way I can get through some of the information. I'm only going to go over some things. I don't want to get too far in depth with a lot of this stuff, but I just kind of want to get some information out there to help people understand why adequate amounts of protein is so important and why I harp on that so much. I'm actually going back through the fitness nutrition specialist certification with NASM this time. The first time I did it, I went through a different company called AFAA. They have actually teamed up with a more prestigious company, NASM. So I'm actually going back through it. And one of the modules, or the module that I did this morning, was over protein. So it kind of worked out because I had already planned on talking about this. So I wanted to just have some information on hand. So I took some notes and wanted to make sure that I went over some of the stuff. So the first thing, the word protein comes from a Greek word protos, and protos means prime importance. So that already tells you that protein is pretty important, right? They used that word to name it. So protein is actually the most important macronutrient that you can intake. It regulates so many functions in the body, and it helps with digestion. It can be an enzyme, it can be a hormone, it can be a chemical, a chemical in the body. There's transport proteins that actually transport fat molecules and fat, like vitamin A, many of the fat soluble vitamins. It actually transports them across the cell membranes. So if you don't have enough protein in your diet, not only is it going to trigger effects in your brain function, but it's also going to trigger effects in your immune system, and you'll learn why. And also many other processes in your body. And also, when you ingest protein, your body's burning more calories to break it down because of the way that protein is made up. It's a ton of amino acids put together in kind of a helix. So your body, it's twisting and turning. So your body actually has to come in and bring in more enzymes to cut it apart and use it the way it needs to. So that's going to burn more calories. So protein is very, very important. It's a vital nutrient that everybody needs to be aware of. Okay. And it doesn't matter vegan, vegetarian, it doesn't matter what you prefer to put in your body. You still need to have an adequate amount of protein no matter where you get that from. Okay. So just keep that in mind. All right. So as I said, your body is constantly assembling, breaking down, and using proteins. And so you depend on your diet to provide enough protein each day to replace what you use. So your body's not only using, the reason you have to bring in so much is because your body is using it constantly. So you need to make sure that you keep bringing that in. All right. Protein helps maintain fluid balance by pumping molecules across the cell membranes and attracting water. Okay. So that's something I kind of mentioned already. It's going to help with, getting certain cells across the cell membrane. The cell membrane is actually, it's made up of, certain things. So you have to make sure you have something that can penetrate that to where the nutrients can actually get inside the cell. And it also attracts water. Proteins maintain the acid-base balance of bodily fluids by taking up or giving off hydrogen ions as needed. So your body has to maintain a certain pH. If anybody doesn't know what pH is, and you haven't taken chemistry before, it's basically the way that the body has to be regulated. So if it's too acidic, then it has to bring in something to help, control that. And if it's too basic, then same thing. It has to bring in something to control that, because your body has to sustain a certain pH level, or else it'll go into certain things, other dysfunctions. All right. So I'm going to look at all the questions as soon as I get done. Let me get through this real quick, okay? Because I see Devin has one, so I'm going to come back to that. Proteins, like I said earlier, proteins transport many key substances such as oxygen, vitamins, like I said, vitamin A and all the other fat-soluble vitamins, ADEX. So vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin E, and vitamin K are your fat-soluble vitamins. So if you don't have transport proteins to transport those across the cell membrane, then your body, you might end up with things like vitamin A deficiency, vitamin D deficiency, things like that. All right. And it also helps transport the minerals to target cells throughout the body. All right. So, also, like I said earlier, hormones are often made up of protein. Some of your hormones are proteins. So this includes insulin. So most people don't know that insulin is actually a protein. All right. It's a protein hormone that plays a key role in regulating the amount of glucose in the blood. All right. So sometimes when people have issues with insulin regulation, it's actually because they're not getting enough protein in their body, which is something that a lot of the doctors don't recognize. But it's something that as nutrition specialists, and especially if you go to see a dietitian or a nutritionist or something like that, then they will usually, bring something like that up. So that way you understand. A lot of the issues that people end up facing actually have a lot to do with the nutrition intake. So it's good to look at that as the foundation before you just start taking meds. Another hormone, well, actually two more hormones. You have thyroid stimulating hormone and then also leptin. Leptin is actually one of the key players in burning more calories and actually helping with body fat loss. All right. So this is something I actually studied a long time ago, leptin. And leptin, women actually have 3 times more, but because our bodies are made for childbearing, our bodies hold on to it more. So it's harder for the leptin to actually penetrate where it needs to and actually do what it's supposed to do, which is burn body fat. So men only have, some leptin, but because they're not childbearing, their body uses it all. So we're women and we have to fight a little bit harder. But that's another reason why you need to make sure you're taking in enough protein, because that way you get the adequate leptin that you need, and then you're burning off the body fat that you need. You're burning more calories throughout the day. Another one is thyroxine. So thyroxine is a modified form of the amino acid tyrosine. Tyrosine, if you remember in the amino acid video, is one of your essential amino acids, your 9 essential amino acids. If you're not sure how that works, then you can go back and look at that video and learn a little bit more about amino acids, since that's actually, amino acids is what makes up protein in the first place. Tyrosine actually increases the body's metabolic rate. All right, so hopefully anyone who is struggling with fat loss or anything like that, especially women, hopefully you're starting to kind of see, and like I said, I'm keeping this very, very basic and kind of short, but hopefully you're kind of starting to see why protein is so important in the body and why I have people eat a certain amount of protein whenever I give them their nutrition breakdown. Like I said earlier, proteins play an important role in the immune system. So when you have people that are often sick and not able to fight off certain viruses and bacterial infections, some of it has to do with the way they're eating. So it's always good, again, to go back and kind of look at your diet and your nutrition intake. And that's why I have people track their foods as well, because otherwise, do they really know what they're eating? No. And the same with me. If I didn't track my foods, I don't really know what I'm eating. I might be able to guess. And yes, I've been doing this for a long time, so it might be a little bit easier for me to get my proteins and all my nutrients in. But I won't really know unless I make sure I track that. So I've actually made it a point lately to schedule in to my day, making sure that I have my foods tracked. I'll do it beforehand most of the time, but sometimes my meals might change a little bit. So I'll go in and adjust so that way I can still see what I need, or, if I'm missing anything. But if you don't track your foods, then it's really going to be hard to figure out how much you're eating and if you're meeting your needs. It's very important to know. All right, so your antibodies are your blood proteins, and most of your antibodies, or actually all your antibodies, are made up of proteins, right? So I just said that, blood proteins. All right, and your antibodies are what fight off the infections. All right, when your diet doesn't contain enough protein, your body can't make as many antibodies as it needs, and your immune response weakens, which is what I was saying. That's why a lot of people who get sick, that's why they're getting sick. They're not eating enough protein. And you see this a lot in people who are, trying to lose weight. They're cutting in the wrong places. They don't understand the nutrition and why they need certain things. So they're just cutting out certain things. Most of the time they're cutting out proteins, and then they're getting sick. And I see this a lot. So it's really important to understand that. Proteins help maintain, like I said earlier, a stable pH level of your body fluids because they act as buffers. And the buffers is what helps with, keeping acid and too basic of solutions at bay. So if you eat something really, really spicy, proteins actually come in and they help buffer that. So that way your body can still digest it just fine and you don't end up with a lot of heartburn and indigestion. Some people actually have disorders that they're not able to digest spicy food. So the protein doesn't really have a lot to do with that. That's something else that is caused within their body. So, and that's a whole different ballgame. So, but just for normal, understanding, then it is important to know that the protein intake actually acts as buffers whenever you're eating. They also act as carriers, like I mentioned earlier, transports certain cells across the cell membrane, certain vitamins and things like that across the cell membrane. So that way you can get what you need, your body can get what it needs to help with, eyesight, brain function, whatever it is that it needs. Protein can be used for energy to form glucose. The thing about your body is our bodies are super smart. So our bodies are going to use whatever it has to get what it needs, basically. So it goes through this process. Basically, it'll use whatever it needs to provide energy for the body. So people who are on really low carb diets or no carb diets, their body is actually attacking the protein to get that glucose. And I know some people, especially with keto, a lot of people utilize the fat as their energy, and your body can break that down as well. However you are eating, you need to make sure you understand the nutrition aspect and what each nutrient does for your body. Because if you don't understand that, you are going to be doing more harm than good. And you might look good on the outside, but that's not going to matter because your insides are going to be all messed up. Okay, so it's really, really, really important that you understand what you're doing to your body. Okay, consult a professional, consult someone who can help you out, and just remember that all the nutrients are good for you if used properly. Okay, so that's very important to remember. If you don't remember anything else from this video, remember that taking out a certain nutrient is not necessarily going to be good for your body. Okay, like I said, the protein can be used for energy to make glucose if it's needed. Carbs actually spare your protein. So when people are on no carb or low carb diets, it's really going to be more harmful than good. The carbs actually spare the amino acids from being used as an energy source. And, the body will sacrifice its own protein from enzymes, muscle, which there you go with muscle loss, and other tissues to make energy and glucose that the brain, lungs, and heart needs. Okay. Your body needs to regulate a certain way no matter what you bring in. Okay. So people who are like malnourished, or anything like that, their body, most of the time they're going to be really thin because their body is having to take whatever it has in the muscle, like those proteins in the muscle, and use that as energy to disperse wherever it needs to disperse it. Okay. So that's my little spiel on protein and why it's so important. And let's see. Devin says, how do you know if you're overtraining? Well, there's a lot of things actually. If you're starting to get inflammation in areas that you may not have had inflammation in before, then that's one way of knowing that you're overtraining. Usually you'll feel it. I know I've been there before, and I would just feel super tired all the time. So that was a pretty good indication that I was overtraining. When I was sustaining more injuries, and I ended up with elbow tendonitis at one point. I have a tear in my rear delt, and at one point, and I think it was like 2016, when I was getting ready for a couple of shows, I was overtraining, but I didn't realize it. So now I make sure that I keep a really good steady balance. I listen to my body a lot more, and I don't force anything that's not there for that day. So, I push myself to a certain extent, but I know my limits. I know where I need to calm down and things like that. If my back's feeling good, then I might go a little bit heavier in deadlifts, but I don't stay in the gym anymore than like an hour and a half now. I used to be in there like 3 hours, and that was really just not doing any good. Your body, really, if you can get a good workout in an hour to an hour and a half, anything beyond that, like I know there's a girl here that I met in the gym here, and she's going to the gym like 3 hours a day, and she's competing. She's trying to get her pro card. And I think in bodybuilding, we have to be careful, because especially as we get older, we have to remember that our bodies are machines, but we have to also make sure that we're focusing on other areas in our lives. So we have to make sure that we're fueling our bodies properly. So hopefully when she's in the gym, and I don't know her regimen or anything like that, she looks amazing, but I don't know what's going on the inside. The fact that she's able to sustain that right now is a great thing. I just really hope that it doesn't affect her later, which is what happened with me. I was able to do all that before, but now it's affecting me later. So I actually went back to square one in my training and kind of looked at the drawing board, and I was like, okay, well, I know that these are areas that I need to be careful with. It's not really going to help me to be in the gym for 2 and 3 hours, because one, my body's going to start using protein for energy, right? If I don't have anything with me to eat or something like that. And then two, I'm going to end up overusing the muscles and the tendons and the ligaments and things like that. And I'm going to end up with inflammation in areas that I may not have had it before. So that's one indication. You're going to know if you're doing too much, and that's when you kind of need to digress and just kind of go back to the drawing board and say, okay, well, this is what I want to be able to do, and just have a good game plan of how you want to get there. So hopefully that helps you with that question, Devin. Trying to see if I don't see any other questions on here. Does anybody else have any other questions? I see Jan just came on. Hey, Jan. And then David, Haley. Hey, Haley. Trying to see who else is on here. Hey, you guys. All right. So hopefully I've answered some questions about, because a lot of people are like, well, why do I have to eat so much protein? And you really don't. Science recommends about 0.8 to 1 gram per pound of body weight. So basically, if you weigh 150 pounds and you ingest, 130 grams of protein, that's pretty adequate. So just keep that in mind when you're trying to figure out how much you need to be eating on a daily basis. But just remember how important it is. And, it does also contribute to developing lean muscle and burning body fat. So for people who are trying to lose weight, ingesting protein, adequate levels of protein is actually going to be really beneficial for you. Now, when people are trying to build a ton of muscle, then they might actually, ingest more protein. But really anything over about 1.6 gram per pound is going to be a little bit too much. So you always want to remember that moderation is key in anything. All right. And you need to know how much of everything that you should be ingesting. So hopefully, like I said, hopefully that helps everybody out. For anyone who is just now joining, I hope that you go back and look at the video so you can learn a little bit more about protein and why it's so important for your body. There's a lot of other things that I've learned along the way that I could go into. I could probably easily have like a 3-hour class on just protein. But I don't have time to do that today. And also I don't want to lose anybody. So I just wanted to keep it really basic and just kind of go over some of the things that I went over this morning just in my, in the certification that I did. So, always remember too, education is key. So if there's something that you're not sure about, you can always research it or reach out to me or someone else that you trust and that knows what they're talking about. And, we can help you with that too. Yes. Yeah, definitely go back and listen. Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to get off of here. I really appreciate everybody for, being on here. And Devin, thank you for your question. Hopefully people, got something out of that as well. It is important not to overtrain. And especially as competitors, it's very easy for us to fall into that trap because we're looking at other competitors. And I've done that before where it's like, oh, but, he or she is staying in the gym for however long and I need to be able to do that too. But in reality, I don't have the same body as they do. I actually have a lot of degeneration in my body. So I need to make sure that I'm doing what's going to work for me. And I'll be able to build the muscle. It might take me a little bit longer, but I'm also going to be healthy about it. I'm not going to do anything that's going to end up injuring me more in the long run because I want to be able to do everything consistently. I don't want to have to keep taking breaks all the time, which is what I was having to do before. All right. Anything else? I'm going to wait. Let's see. It's 8:37 now, so I'm not cutting it too early. Just a few minutes, but I'm going to wait and see if anybody has anything else. I really do appreciate you guys for being on here and for being a part of the group and, supporting me and pushing me to be better. Everyone who, reaches out and says all the great things that you guys say, it just really makes me want to work harder. So I really appreciate you guys for that. So just know that. Anyone who has worked with me previously, I've definitely changed things up a whole lot now, but what I'm doing now, I know that it's going to guarantee results. So I'm really happy about it. As long as everybody does the work, all you have to do is do the work. But I'll help get you there. All right, you guys, like I said, if you missed any of the video, just make sure you go back. Hopefully people will watch this later as well. And I'm going to also post it on YouTube. So I'll post that link too if you want to go on there. I know people like YouTube videos, right? So, but yeah, so protein. Make sure you're getting your protein in. It's not just because you want to build muscle. It's also to help with all your bodily processes, okay? And it helps you stay away from being sick all the time. All right. So just make sure you understand that. If anybody's out there and you're limiting your protein, just make sure that you're getting an adequate amount. Remember what I said, 0.8 to 1 gram per pound is very adequate and will allow you to be able to sustain these bodily processes each day. All right. And if you're not sure how much protein you're getting, download MyFitnessPal or some kind of diary tracking app. And go ahead and, track your foods so that way you know what you're getting. All right. Because just guessing isn't going to cut it, you guys. I'm sorry. All right. Have a great day. Thanks again for watching. All right. Bye, you guys. See you next week.